Well, John, this is the very first opera of the second century of San Francisco opera, and it was so important to us to do this with you because you're someone who's had this extraordinary relationship with this company. This is the third of your operas that we've done the world premiere of, and the fifth of your operas that we've had on our stage. And to be doing it with someone who is a part of this community is deeply meaningful for us, and I'm just so proud that we have this moment to begin our next century with you. I just wondered what it's like for you to be composing something for your home company, and again, you're composing all over the world, but to be doing it with, in an orchestra where you know members of the orchestra.
Well, I was born and grew up in New England, but I came to California when I was in my early 20s, and I've lived here for 50 years.
Right.
And I've taken great pride in my relationship to the musical culture, not only here in San Francisco with the opera company and with the San Francisco Symphony, but also with the Los Angeles Philharmonic, which is an organization that I'm very closely associated with.
Right.
As far as writing pieces that get premiered here, I think about Sibelius, or I think about Bartók, or Elgar, for that matter. That they believed in their own culture. They took inspiration from their own culture. So if I could even be, half as good as either of those composers, I'd feel very proud.
John, let's talk a little bit about orchestration and how you are bringing these worlds into life through the instrumentation. And you are somebody who composes first for the orchestra and then it gets reduced down for the piano afterwards. Some other composers do it the other way around. They begin with the piano and then orchestrate. I'm just curious if you can give us some sense as to what that is like for you to carry, potentially 30, 40 lines of different orchestral instruments, and whether you are thinking very much in different sonorities as you put the music down to paper for the first time.
Well, I grew up with the orchestra in my bones, so to speak. I started playing in an orchestra. I played the clarinet.
Right.
I played in an amateur orchestra with my father, and I started conducting when I was a teenager. And when I was in college, I sometimes was called in by the Boston Symphony as an extra player. So I've always thought, felt, spoke orchestra, and I love writing for it. So composing an opera, it's a constant balance between the voice and the words and the orchestra. And of course, Wagner, for all of us, is the great model there, because Wagner used the orchestra as another character, as a kind of character. And so a lot of the emotional content of the opera is coming from the pit. And I think that's certainly the case with me.
Absolutely.
This is not a particularly unusual orchestra that I've written for Antony and Cleopatra, although it does have one special instrument, which is the cimbalom, which is a Hungarian zither. And I've been using it quite often in my recent works. It gives a certain kind of slightly sour quality or spicy quality to the orchestra.
This is a big tabletop instrument with strings that someone plays with sort of cotton-tipped hammers, right?
It looks like the inside of a piano without the keyboard.
Right. As you were going through that process, how were you thinking about music? Were you aware that you needed certain things musically and certain scenes musically?
I think people imagine us composers as being far more strategic and knowing more about what we're going to do before we write our first note. But I have to tell you that being a composer is sort of like being, Columbus or Magellan. There's a continent out there somewhere, but you're not sure. I don't really know where I'm going when I start a piece. I knew the general plot and I had the libretto, but in terms of the actual music, that's a very mysterious thing. And I always say, particularly to young composers when they ask me, the first thing you have to do is sort of find the DNA, find the musical DNA one specific thing that differs about Antony and Cleopatra from all of my earlier stage works. It's that this opera really is a sung drama. In fact, there are not that many arias. There are not that many sort of set pieces where a character stops and has a big soliloquy. People are really bouncing off each other. There's this constant back and forth in this stage. So the effect, I think, of course, I'm speaking to you just as we're getting going in the rehearsal project, but I suspect that the effect is going to be very different from anything I've ever written before.